Hey everyone, and welcome to Exam Edge for Community Medicine. Today we are tackling a huge topic, the demographic cycle. This is one of those core concepts that really explains the bigger picture, how and why entire populations change over time.
I mean, it's a massive question, right? It impacts literally everything, healthcare, the economy, you name it. And the answer? Well, it's all packed into this one powerful model. So if you're ready to finally crack the code on population dynamics, let's jump right in.
But hey, before we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You are not going to want to miss out on these high-yield explainers that'll give you that critical edge for your exams.
All right, let's get to it. We are going to unpack the whole story of the demographic cycle. Think of it like the biography of a country's population, all the way from its pre-industrial beginnings right up to the modern day. So what is this thing really? At its heart, the demographic cycle is just a model. It tracks how birth rates and death rates change as a country develops. And look, we've boiled this down from the gold standard textbooks like PARCC and PSM, so you know this is the stuff you need for your exams. The whole thing really comes down to the dance between two key lines on a graph.
And this is it. This one graph is where the entire story unfolds across 5 distinct stages. You've got the rate per thousand on the y-axis and time broken down by stages on the x-axis. So let's build this thing out, one stage at a time.
Okay, our journey starts way back in stage 1, what we call the high stationary phase. I want you to picture a pre-modern society, farming, villages, long before any of the big advancements we take for granted today.
The big idea here is balance, but it's a brutal kind of balance. You've got a super high birth rate, but you've also got a super high death rate. We're talking maybe 40 to 50 per thousand for both. So what happens? They basically cancel each other out. The population just kind of sits there, totally stable or maybe growing just a tiny, tiny bit.
And you can see it right here on our graph. Look at those two lines. They're both way up high and they're jumping all over the place because, famine one year, a plague the next. But notice how they hug each other pretty closely. And here's a key takeaway for your exams. No country on Earth is really in stage 1 anymore. It's a thing of the past.
So why were things like this? Well, the high birth rates made sense. There was no family planning, and you needed a lot of kids to help on the farm. But on the flip side, you had these tragically high death rates from diseases, terrible sanitation, and not always having enough food. Life was just really harsh, and that's what kept the population from growing.
Okay, now we're getting to the most dramatic part of the whole cycle, the expanding phases. This is where everything starts to change, and fast.
So in stage 2, something huge happens. The birth rate, it stays high. Come on, social norms, traditions, those things take forever to change. But the death rate, it starts to fall off a cliff. And what do you get when you have tons of babies being born, but people stop dying so young? You get a population explosion.
Just look at the graph. See that death rate line just plunging down while the birth rate line is still way up high? That giant gap opening up between them? That is the population explosion. A lot of countries in South Asia and Africa hit this stage during the 20th century. A perfect modern-day example? Afghanistan. So what's causing this massive shift? It's basically the dawn of modernization. We're talking about basic public health, cleaner water, better sanitation, new medicines, and more reliable food. All these things mean people start living longer. The death rate tumbles, but the tradition of having big families sticks around. And boom, that's what fuels the crazy growth.
All right, that leads us into stage 3, the late expanding phase. Now, the death rate is still falling, but the big news is that the birth rate finally starts to come down too. The population's still growing for sure, but that explosive pace starts to cool off.
See on the graph how that big gap is starting to shrink? That's the birth rate coming down to meet the death rate. And why is that happening? Well, people are moving to cities, there's better access to contraception, women are getting more education and opportunities, and since kids are much more likely to survive to adulthood, having a huge family just isn't an economic necessity anymore. A classic example of a country in this stage today is India. And this brings us to a whole new kind of equilibrium in stage 4, the low stationary phase. This is pretty much where most developed countries find themselves today. So here's what's cool. The population becomes stable again, kind of like it was back in stage 1. But it's a totally different world. This time, the balance comes from a low birth rate and a low death rate. So the population is stable, or maybe just creeping up a tiny bit.
And on our graph, you can see it perfectly. The two lines are now way down low, running almost parallel to each other. This is the signature of a modern, developed society. Good healthcare, great education, and family planning is just normal. Think of places like the USA or Australia.
But wait, the story's not over. Some experts argue there's a fifth stage, a final chapter that presents a brand new, kind of tricky challenge for humanity.
This is stage 5. The birth rate doesn't just get low, it drops so much that it actually falls below the death rate. For the first time in this whole journey, you have more people dying than being born. And the result? The total population actually starts to decrease.
This is the big plot twist. Look at the graph. That's the moment the birth rate line literally crosses under the death rate line. It's a massive deal. It signifies a natural population decline. Countries like Japan and a lot of nations in Eastern Europe are living this reality right now and trying to figure out what it means for their future.
Whoa, okay, that was a ton of information. So let's do a lightning-fast recap to really lock this in for your exams. You ready? Let's do it in 60 seconds. Okay, let's lock this in. Stage 1, high, population is stable. Stage 2, high falling, population explodes. Stage 3, falling low, growth starts to slow. Stage 4, low, stable all over again. And stage 5, the big crossover. Birth rate is below the death rate and the population shrinks. Boom, that's the whole cycle. 5 easy steps. All right, now I've got a question for you. Think about your own country. Based on everything we just covered, what stage do you think it's in right now? I really want to know what you think, so drop your answer in the comments below and tell us why. Let's get a conversation going. And hey, if this finally made the demographic cycle click for you, do me a favor and smash that like button. Share it with your friends, your batchmates, anyone who needs it. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to Exam Edge for way more high-yield community medicine content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.